My name is Iris Morgan. I'm 31 years old and I work as a fraud investigator for the Internal Revenue Service. My job is to find people who lie about money, people who hide assets, falsify documents, manipulate the vulnerable. I'm good at what I do. I can spot inconsistencies in financial records that most people would miss. Numbers tell stories if you know how to read them. I spent 7 years learning that language, 7 years building a career on uncovering the truth. I never thought I'd need to use those skills on my own family. My father died 3 weeks ago. Heart attack. He was 68. It was sudden. One day he was fine, complaining about his golf game. The next day he was gone. My brother Ethan called me. I was at work, reviewing a case involving real estate fraud. My phone rang. Ethan's name on the screen. I answered. "Hey, what's up?" His voice was shaking. "Dad's gone. He had a heart attack this morning. He didn't make it." I remember sitting there, at my desk, people walking past my office, the hum of fluorescent lights. Everything felt surreal. What? When? Where? At home. Mom found him. The paramedics tried, but it was too late. "Iris, you need to come home." Home. I hadn't been home in almost a year. Home was Seattle. I lived in Washington, D.C., 3,000 miles away. That distance wasn't accidental. I took emergency leave, booked a flight, arrived in Seattle the next day. My mother picked me up from the airport. She looked older, tired. Her eyes were red from crying. "I'm so sorry, Mom," I said. She hugged me, brief, tight, then pulled away. Ethan's been handling everything, the funeral arrangements, the paperwork. He's been such a help. Of course he had. Ethan was always the helpful one, the son who stayed close, who visited every weekend, who called every day. I was the daughter who left, who chose her career over family, who only came home for major holidays, and even then sometimes made excuses. The funeral was scheduled for 3 days later. Those 3 days were a blur. Relatives arriving, phone calls, casseroles appearing on the kitchen counter. Everyone had something to say about my father, what a good man he was, how much he'd be missed, how proud he was of his children. Ethan played the devoted son perfectly. He greeted guests, organized the service, consoled my mother. He wore grief well. I wore it badly. I didn't cry at the funeral. I stood there feeling numb. People probably thought I was cold, unfeeling, the daughter who didn't care enough. After the funeral, we gathered at my parents' house. Well, my mother's house now. Family filled the living room, aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone eating, drinking, sharing memories. I stood in the corner nursing a glass of wine, wanting to leave but knowing I couldn't yet. That's when my father's lawyer arrived, Martin Bradshaw. He'd been my father's attorney for 20 years. He pulled my mother, Ethan, and me aside, led us to my father's study, closed the door. "I'm very sorry for your loss," Martin said. He had a manila folder, thick, official-looking. "I know this is a difficult timing, but we need to discuss your father's will." My mother nodded. "Of course." Martin opened the folder, pulled out documents. "Your father updated his will 6 months ago. He was very clear about his wishes." He looked at me, then at Ethan. "The estate is valued at approximately $1.2 million. This includes the house, his retirement accounts, savings, and investments." My mother's eyes widened. She hadn't known the exact amount. Martin continued. "The house is left to you, Margaret, as expected. You'll also receive his life insurance policy. That's another $500,000. He paused, looked uncomfortable. "The remainder of the estate, approximately $700,000, is to be divided between his children." I waited. Here it comes. "Ethan receives the full amount. Iris receives nothing." The room went silent. I felt like I'd been slapped. "What?" Martin looked genuinely sorry. "Your father included a letter explaining his reasoning. Would you like me to read it?" "Yes," I said. My voice sounded distant, not quite mine. Martin pulled out another paper, unfolded it, read in my father's words. "To my daughter, Iris, I love you, but I'm disappointed in the choices you've made. You left Seattle to pursue your career in D.C. You rarely visit. You've missed birthdays, holidays, important family events. When your grandmother died, you came for 2 days and left. You didn't help with the estate. You didn't help your mother. Ethan has been here. Ethan has been the son I needed. He visits every week. He helped me with house repairs, with medical appointments, with everything. He's earned this inheritance. I hope you understand. This isn't punishment, it's recognition of the child who stayed. Love, Dad. I stood there, processing. $700,000, all to Ethan, because I'd built a career, because I'd moved away, because I hadn't been the perfect daughter who stayed close to home. Ethan looked shocked. Dad, I didn't know. Iris, I had no idea. Sure you didn't, I said flatly. You had no idea that spending every weekend at Dad's house would pay off like this. That's not fair, Ethan said. I was there because I cared, because Dad needed help, not for money. Iris, my mother said, your father made his choice. We have to respect that. Do we? I looked at Martin. This is legal? He can just disinherit one child completely? It's his estate. He can distribute it however he wishes. The will is valid, properly witnessed, and notarized. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to demand answers from a dead man who couldn't respond. Instead, I did what I always do when overwhelmed. I went analytical, cold, professional. When exactly did he update the will? I asked Martin. 6 months ago, March 15th.
March. Something about that date felt significant. I pulled out my phone, checked my calendar, scrolled back to March. There it was, March 10th, the last time I'd visited home, a weekend trip. I'd stayed 2 days, had dinner with my parents, then flew back to D.C. for an important case. My father had changed his will 5 days after that visit, 5 days after seeing me for the last time. What had I done? What had I said? I replayed the weekend in my head. We'd talked about work, about my cases, about D.C. I'd been distracted. There was a major fraud investigation I was leading. I'd checked my phone during dinner, taken a call from my boss, left early Sunday because of a meeting Monday morning. Had that been enough? Had that convinced him I didn't care? Or was there something else? I looked at Ethan, really looked at him. He seemed uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact. His shock seemed a little too performed, a little too convenient. I need some air, I said. I walked out of the study, out of the house, stood in the backyard where I'd played as a child, where my father taught me to ride a bike, where we'd had barbecues every summer. This house held 31 years of memories, and now it felt like a crime scene, because something was wrong. I could feel it. The same instinct that made me good at my job was screaming that this didn't add up. My father and I weren't close, that was true, but we weren't estranged. We talked on the phone every few weeks. He'd seemed proud of my career, proud that his daughter worked for the IRS, fighting financial crime. He'd joke about it. Make sure you're keeping the crooks honest, Iris. Why would he suddenly decide I deserved nothing? Why would he phrase it as disappointment when he'd never expressed that before? And why 6 months ago? What changed in March? I went back inside, found Martin still in the study with my mother and Ethan. Can I see the original will, the one before he updated it? Martin hesitated. I suppose that's not confidential. You were a beneficiary in the previous version. He pulled out another document. In the original will from 5 years ago, the estate was split evenly between you and Ethan, 50-50. What changed, I asked, besides his feelings about my career? He can only tell you what your father told me. He said Ethan had been instrumental in helping him manage his affairs, that Ethan deserved to be rewarded for his dedication. His affairs, I repeated. What affairs? Martin looked uncomfortable again. Your father's health had been declining, memory issues. He'd been diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's about a year ago. The world tilted. What? Mom, did you know about this? My mother nodded, tears in her eyes. The doctors said it was mild, manageable, but it was progressing. Ethan helped him keep track of medications, appointments, finances. Finances, I said slowly. Ethan had access to Dad's finances? Someone had to help, my mother said. Your father was forgetting things. Bills weren't getting paid. I don't understand that stuff. Ethan stepped in. I looked at Ethan. He was very still. You were managing Dad's money? Helping, Ethan said. Just making sure things got paid on time, making sure he didn't get scammed by those phone calls targeting elderly people. Right, just helping. But my mind was racing. Alzheimer's, memory issues, vulnerable adult, financial control, and a will that got changed 6 months ago, leaving everything to the person controlling the money. This was exactly the kind of case I investigated. Elder financial abuse. It happens constantly. Adult children taking advantage of aging parents, manipulating them, controlling their assets, and my specialty was finding it. I need copies of everything, I told Martin. The will, the old will, any financial documents you have. Iris, why? Ethan asked. His voice had an edge now. Are you seriously going to contest this? Dad made his wishes clear. Did he? Or did someone help him make those wishes? That's insulting, Ethan said. Is it? You had access to his finances. He had Alzheimer's, and suddenly he decides to cut me out completely? That doesn't sound like Dad. That sounds like manipulation. Iris, my mother looked horrified. How can you accuse your brother of that? He's been nothing but helpful. Your father trusted him. Maybe he trusted him too much. Martin cleared his throat. I can provide copies of the will and related estate documents, but if you're planning to contest, you'll need grounds, legal grounds, not just suspicion. Oh, I'll find grounds, I said. That's literally what I do for a living. I left the study, went upstairs to my childhood bedroom. It looked the same. Pink walls I'd picked when I was 12, bookshelf full of old textbooks, desk where I'd studied for the SATs. I sat on the bed and opened my laptop. If Ethan had been stealing from our father, there would be evidence. There always is. People think they're clever, they think they can cover their tracks, but money leaves traces, especially when someone gets greedy. I started with public records, property records, court records, liens, judgments, bankruptcies, basic background work. Ethan's name came up clean, no criminal record, no bankruptcies. But there was something interesting. 5 years ago, Ethan bought a house, a nice house in a good neighborhood. Purchase price $450,000, mortgage $360,000. That means he'd put down $90,000. Where did a 28-year-old get $90,000? Ethan worked in sales, made decent money, but not that much. I dug deeper, found the closing documents, down payment source, gift from family. Gift from family could be legitimate. Parents help their kids buy houses all the time. But the timing was interesting. 5 years ago, right around when the original will was written, the will that split everything 50-50. I kept digging, looked at Ethan's social media, his lifestyle, posts from the past few years, expensive vacations, new car, designer clothes, nice restaurants. He was living well, too well for someone making $65,000 a year. Then I checked my father's obituary. It listed Ethan's address. I pulled up property records for that address, the house Ethan bought 5 years ago, checked the ownership history. 2 years ago, the house had been refinanced. New mortgage, $400,000. That's a cash-out refinance. Ethan pulled out $40,000 in equity from the house. That makes sense if property values had gone up. But where did that $40,000 go? I made notes, built a timeline, started forming hypotheses. If Ethan had been stealing from our father, when did it start? How much did he take? How did he hide it? The house was the first clue. The down payment 5 years ago, that was before Dad's Alzheimer's diagnosis. But maybe it was the beginning. Maybe Ethan saw an opportunity, convinced Dad to give him money for a house, called it a gift. Dad was generous, he'd want to help his son. But gifts over a certain amount have to be reported to the IRS, gift tax rules. I'd need to see Dad's tax returns, see if he'd reported giving Ethan $90,000. If he hadn't, that was a problem. If he had, that paper trail would show the transaction. I needed more information, financial records, bank statements, tax returns, the kind of documents I'd subpoena if this were an official investigation. But this wasn't official, this was personal, and I didn't have subpoena power in my personal life. But I did have access to some things. My mother would have my father's documents, his files. He was organized, kept everything, old tax returns, bank statements, investment records. They'd be in his study, in the filing cabinet, the same place they'd always been. I waited until after midnight, until my mother went to bed, until the house was quiet. Then I went downstairs, carefully, quietly, into my father's study. The filing cabinet wasn't locked. Why would it be? Who locks filing cabinets in their own home? I pulled out folders, tax returns first, started with the most recent year, worked backward, found what I was looking for in the return from 5 years ago, Form 709, gift tax return. My father had reported giving Ethan $90,000, officially, legally, so that part was legitimate. But there was a note attached, handwritten, my father's handwriting, down payment for Ethan's house, early inheritance distribution, to be balanced with Iris's share in final estate settlement. Early inheritance to be balanced.
My father intended to give me $90,000 too, either before he died or in his will, to make it fair, so we'd each get the same amount. But the current will didn't balance anything. It gave Ethan everything, which meant either my father changed his mind about fairness or someone convinced him to. I kept searching, found bank statements, checked my father's checking account history, regular deposits, Social Security, pension, investment dividends, regular withdrawals, utilities, groceries, medical bills, normal stuff. But then I saw something. Starting about 18 months ago, there were additional withdrawals, cash withdrawals, $2,000 here, $3,000 there, sometimes $5,000. Always round numbers, always cash. Add them up, and it was substantial, over $50,000 in 18 months. $50,000 in cash, withdrawn from my father's account. Where did it go? My father didn't use cash for normal expenses. Everything was credit cards or checks. He was organized about that, liked having records. So why sudden large cash withdrawals? I checked his credit card statements. Normal purchases, groceries, gas, restaurants, Amazon orders. Nothing unusual. No big expenses that would explain needing cash. I looked at the dates of the withdrawals, cross-referenced them with my calendar, with Ethan's social media posts. There, a $5,000 cash withdrawal in June of last year. 3 days later, Ethan posted photos from a trip to Hawaii. Much-needed vacation. Another withdrawal, $3,000 in September. A week later, Ethan posted a photo of a new Rolex. Treating myself. The pattern continued, money disappearing from Dad's account, appearing in Ethan's lifestyle. But how? How was Ethan getting the cash? Was Dad giving it to him? Was Ethan forging withdrawals? I needed to know who was actually making the withdrawals. I checked the bank statements more carefully. Some withdrawals were from ATMs, others from bank teller transactions. For teller transactions, there'd be a record, a signature. I needed those records. but I couldn't get them without access to the actual bank account, and I didn't have that access. Ethan did, as my father's financial helper. He probably had power of attorney, could access accounts, make withdrawals, all legally. Power of attorney, that was the key. If Ethan had POA, he could control Dad's money, and if Dad had Alzheimer's, he might not notice money disappearing, might not remember giving permission, might sign documents without understanding what they were. This was looking more and more like a textbook case of elder financial abuse, the kind I'd seen dozens of times. Adult child gets power of attorney, starts helping with finances, gradually drains accounts. By the time anyone notices, the money's gone and the parent is either dead or too impaired to testify. But suspicion isn't proof. I needed documentation. I needed to show that Ethan had systematically stolen from our father, that he'd manipulated a man with dementia, that the will change wasn't my father's true wishes, but Ethan's manipulation. I took photos of everything, the tax returns, the bank statements, the handwritten note about balancing inheritance, all of it, uploaded to my secure cloud storage, then carefully put everything back exactly where I'd found it. I went back to my room, lay in bed staring at the ceiling, planning my next move. This wasn't just about money. This was about my father, about protecting his memory, about making sure he wasn't taken advantage of in his final years. And yes, okay, it was also about me, about not letting Ethan steal my inheritance, about not being the daughter who got nothing while her brother got rich. The next morning at breakfast, I was calm, pleasant. I'm extending my stay, taking a couple more weeks off work. I want to help with estate stuff, cleaning out Dad's things, whatever you need. My mother looked relieved. That would be wonderful. There's so much to do. Ethan looked nervous. I thought you had to get back to work. That big case you're working on? It can wait. Family is more important. I smiled at him. Besides, you've been handling so much. You deserve a break. Let me help now. That's not necessary, Ethan said quickly. I've got it under control. I insist. I want to be involved. I want to understand what Dad's affairs looked like, what you've been managing, so I can help Mom after I leave. I saw the calculation in his eyes. He couldn't refuse without looking suspicious. Sure, okay, I'll show you the files. Perfect. Let's start today. We spent the day going through my father's financial documents, Ethan showing me the system he'd set up, the bill-paying schedule, the investment accounts. He was smooth, knowledgeable, helpful, playing the part perfectly. But I was watching for slip-ups, for inconsistencies, for things that didn't match the records I'd seen last night. So Dad gave you power of attorney, I asked casually. Yeah, about 2 years ago, when his memory started getting bad. Someone needed to make sure bills got paid, medical decisions got made if he couldn't. That makes sense. And you've been managing his accounts since then? Just helping, making sure nothing fell through the cracks. Did he give you money, like for expenses? Gas for driving him to appointments, that kind of thing? Ethan hesitated, barely noticeable, but I caught it. Sometimes, if I picked up his prescriptions or groceries, he'd reimburse me. How much, roughly? I don't know, I never kept track. Maybe a couple $100 here and there. A couple hundred, not the 50,000 I'd seen withdrawn. That was nice of him, family helping family. Exactly, Ethan said, relaxing, thinking he'd dodged the question. But I'd confirmed what I needed. Ethan was lying about the amounts, which meant he knew he'd taken more than he should have, which meant consciousness of guilt. Over the next week, I kept digging. During the day, I played the helpful daughter, sorted through Dad's belongings, helped Mom with paperwork, spent time with family. At night, I investigated. I pulled Dad's medical records. As next of kin, I had the right to access them. The Alzheimer's diagnosis was documented, progressive decline noted over the past year, several doctors' notes expressing concern about his decision-making capacity. One note 8 months ago, Patient showing significant memory impairment. Recommend evaluation of financial decision-making capacity. Patient should not sign legal documents without evaluation. 8 months ago, 2 months before the will was changed, a doctor literally recommending Dad not sign legal documents with capacity. But the will got signed anyway. Had Ethan seen this note? Had he deliberately ignored it? I contacted the lawyer, Martin, asked if my father had undergone a capacity evaluation before signing the new will. Martin checked his files. No, your father seemed lucid when he came to my office. He understood what he was signing. I had no reason to request an evaluation. Did he come alone?
No, Ethan accompanied him. Said he was there to help your father remember the details. I thought it was kind of him. Of course Ethan was there. Of course he helped Dad remember. Probably fed him the narrative about me being absent, about deserving nothing, about Ethan earning everything. I talked to Dad's doctor directly, showed my credentials, explained my concern about potential elder abuse. The doctor was careful with his words, but clear in his implication. Your father's Alzheimer's was progressing rapidly in his final year. His judgment was impaired. He was susceptible to suggestion. If someone he trusted told him something repeatedly, he'd come to believe it. That's common with this type of dementia. So if someone told him his daughter didn't care about him, he'd believe it? If told repeatedly by a trusted person, yes, the disease makes patients vulnerable to manipulation. Could he have been manipulated into changing his will? The doctor chose his words carefully. I can't speak to specifics without reviewing all the circumstances, but generally speaking, patients in your father's condition should have legal documents reviewed by an independent party, someone ensuring they're not being unduly influenced. Thank you, I said. That's what I needed to know. I had enough. Medical documentation showing Dad was impaired, evidence of Ethan's financial control, proof of $50,000 in unexplained cash withdrawals, a will changed without proper capacity evaluation, a doctor's recommendation ignored. I contacted the FBI, not local police, federal agents, because this crossed state lines, involved tax issues, and fell under elder abuse statutes that the FBI investigates. I met with Special Agent Sarah Chen, laid out everything I'd found. She listened, took notes, asked questions. This is solid preliminary evidence, she said. We'll need to investigate further, subpoena bank records, interview witnesses, build a complete case. How long will that take? I asked. Months, maybe longer. These investigations are complex. What about the estate? Ethan's getting $700,000. If he's guilty, that's stolen money. We can request a hold on the estate distribution, pending investigation, but you'll need to file a formal complaint. I'm filing it right now, I said. The legal process moved slowly, but it moved. The FBI opened an official investigation into Ethan Morgan for elder financial abuse and fraud. They subpoenaed his bank records, Dad's records, everything. What they found was worse than I'd thought. Over 2 years, Ethan had taken nearly $300,000 from our father, the $50,000 in cash withdrawals, another $100,000 in loans that were never repaid, transfers to Ethan's accounts labeled as gifts, bills paid on Ethan's credit cards using Dad's accounts. It went on and on. Ethan had systematically looted our father's estate, and then ensured he'd inherit everything else by manipulating Dad into changing the will. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, transaction histories, forged signatures, everything documented, everything traceable. The FBI built an airtight case. They arrested Ethan 6 months after Dad's funeral, charged him with elder abuse, theft, fraud, and forgery. The arrest happened at my mother's house. FBI agents showing up at the door, handcuffs, Miranda rights, Ethan's face going white. My mother was devastated. She'd believed in Ethan, trusted him. The evidence broke her heart, but she couldn't deny it. The numbers didn't lie. The criminal trial took another year. Ethan pleaded not guilty, claimed he'd been helping Dad, that the money was gifts, that Dad wanted him to have it. His lawyer tried to paint me as the bitter daughter seeking revenge for being disinherited. But the prosecution had records, had doctors testifying about Dad's impairment, had the medical note recommending against signing legal documents, had bank records showing systematic theft, had everything. The jury deliberated for 3 hours, found Ethan guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 8 years in federal prison, ordered him to pay restitution of $300,000 plus court costs, ordered him to forfeit his claim to the inheritance. The will was voided. A court declared it invalid due to undue influence and lack of capacity. The previous will, the one splitting everything evenly, was reinstated. I got my half of the estate, $350,000, plus the $300,000 Ethan had to pay back, split between Mom and me. My mother cried when the verdict came down. "I'm so sorry, Iris. I should have believed you. I should have seen what he was doing." "It's not your fault, Mom. Ethan was good at hiding it. He fooled Dad, he fooled you, he almost fooled me. But you figured it out because of your job, because you know how to find these things." "Yeah, I know how to find fraud, even when it's my own brother committing it." The family fractured after that. Half believed Ethan was guilty and stopped speaking to him. The other half thought I'd destroyed my brother's life over money, that I should have let it go, that family was more important than inheritance. I didn't care what they thought. I'd done what was right. I'd protected my father's memory. I'd ensured justice. And yes, I'd claimed what was rightfully mine. Ethan's in federal prison now, minimum security. He'll serve at least 6 years before parole consideration. His wife divorced him. His kids barely speak to him. His house was sold to pay restitution. His life is ruined. Sometimes I wonder if I should feel guilty, if I should have handled it differently, given him a chance to pay it back quietly, kept it in the family. But then I remember my father, remember how he was manipulated in his final years, how Ethan took advantage of his declining mind, how he died thinking I didn't love him because Ethan poisoned that relationship. No, I don't feel guilty. I feel satisfied. Justice was served. The audit trail led exactly where it should have, to the truth. My father taught me to stand up for what's right, to not back down when facing injustice, to use my skills to help people. He didn't know that one day I'd use those skills on his behalf, to protect him even after he was gone. I think he'd be proud of that, proud that his daughter didn't give up, didn't let his memory be tarnished by a son who betrayed him, proud that the career he supported led to justice for him. The money sits in my account now. I haven't spent much of it. It doesn't feel like mine. It feels like Dad's, like his final gift. Not just the money itself, but the reminder of what he taught me, to question, to investigate, to demand truth, to never accept things at face value. Those lessons built my career, and they saved his legacy. That's worth more than any inheritance. I visit his grave sometimes, bring flowers, talk to him, tell him about my cases, about the fraudsters I've caught, about the justice I've helped deliver. I tell him I'm sorry I wasn't there more when he was alive, that I wish I'd seen what Ethan was doing sooner, that I wish I could have protected him better. But I also tell him, thank you. Thank you for raising me to be strong, to be smart, to fight for what's right. Thank you for giving me the tools I needed to defend him when he couldn't defend himself. Numbers don't lie. People do. My job is finding the truth hidden in numbers. I did that for my father. I'd do it again, every single time. That's what daughters do. They protect their parents, even from their own sons, especially from their own sons. The audit trail doesn't lie, and I don't either.